What is up, guys? This is QRim from the Trinity of Lift, and today I'm bringing you another episode of Path to Perfection, the weekly series where I select a deck, we go over my main deck, extra deck, and side deck choices, and we just have a little discussion about this deck down in the comment section below. So, for the next 3 weeks, we will be going over Ritual Beasts. Now, the reason why I decided to go for Ritual Beasts for this next segment is one, because I actually personally wanted to learn how to play this deck a little bit better. And what better way to learn how to play a deck better than by talking with other people, which will be you guys. And then also some of you guys showed some interest in seeing this deck again. So like I said before, what better way to just get better with this deck and show this deck off than with making this putting it into the series. So we will be going over Ritual Beast for the next 3 weeks, and just as a little disclaimer for this specific video, I know you guys can probably tell already that pretty much the whole deck is sleeved in ridiculous colors and it's really weird, but this is for the fact that I've been testing this list quite a bit online, but I haven't really had the time to test it out IRL. So in order for me to make this video, I just literally just grabbed all the cards that I needed to make the deck, and just really I didn't have any time to re-sleeve it because I didn't have any spare sleeves to use. So you guys will just have to sadly put up with the multicolored sleeves just for this video. But I assure you that by next week's episode, this whole deck will be re-sleeved in matching sleeves. So until then, we'll get right into this list for today, starting off with our main deck. Alright, so starting us off with our Tamer monsters, we start off with the triple Ritual Beast Tamer, Elder. Elder is probably the best Tamer by far for the fact that he can normal summon himself and then normal summon another Ritual Beast from our hand. Now, it's really significant that he is another additional normal summon for the fact that all of the Ritual Beast monsters can only be special summoned once per turn. So it really does help you work around that restriction at least one time by normal summoning another one so that you can still reuse it when you have to contact in and contact out and all that kind of fun stuff. So we do maximize on our Ritual Beast Tamer Elder. Following that, we have our double copy of Ritual Beast Tamer Wen. We don't need 3 Wen because there are times when she can clog and she has to special summon a Ritual Beast from our banished pile. So again, she doesn't have the biggest benefit as compared to Elder, but we do run 2 of her just to add another name, as well as she still can be a 1-card contact fusion. So that's also pretty nice. Then, following her, we have our Wolfbark equivalents, I guess you could say, with the 1 copy of Ritual Beast Tamer Zephyrin Pilica and the 1 Ritual Beast Tamer Lara. Now, both of these essentially will serve the same function, as they're both pseudo Wolfbarks for this deck, but the reason why I decided to have 1 copy of each is for the fact that it just gives us an additional name to summon each turn, as obviously Zephyrin Pilica and Lara are 2 completely different monsters just with similar effects. So that is why we do run 1 of each, just so we have more names to summon, so that we can keep going with our plays and not ever, like, I guess you could say, run out of special summons. So that is why we run 1 of each, and that will round off our Tamer lineup for this deck. Moving on to the Spiritual Beasts, we go starting off with the triple Spiritual Beast Cannahawk, because Cannahawk is probably the best Spiritual Beast out there. All he does is he basically acts as a gold sarcophagus, and it's really nice because, again, he gets stuff into our banished pile, which is our big resource pool for this deck. So that is why we run 3 Cannahawk. Then, following Cannahawk, we run 3 Spiritual Beast Rampengu, because Rampengu helps foolish monsters to our graveyard, as well as he helps us give free banished fodder for stuff like our ulti Cannahawks and whatnot. So we also do run 3 Rampengu. Next up, we have the double copies of Spiritual Beast Apelio. Now, we have double Apelio here to help us get some graveyard monsters that might be in our graveyard into our banish zone, so that we may use them for contacting in. And also, it's pretty cool because he can be used as a sort of mini Honest in this deck, for the fact that if we do have him on field, we can actually activate his effect during damage step 2, which is also pretty nice. So we do also run 2 Apelio. Then, for the last Spiritual Beast we do run, we have the 1 copy of Spiritual Beast Petalfin. Now, we have 1 Petalfin, obviously, for another name, but we only have 1 for the fact that its effect is fairly lackluster, and we don't want to draw into it majority of the time, as unless we have it with an Elder, it can be kind of slow. So, again, we only do run 1 copy of it. Moving on to the non-archetype specific monsters, we start off with the Triple Veiler. Now, Veiler is here obviously to help us tackle this metagame because there is quite a bit of effects that are going around that we don't want to resolve. So we have the triple Veiler in here to just help us stop those effects and just help us with effect negation. Then finally, for the last monster we do run, we have the one copy of Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, because since this is a primarily psychic deck, I guess you could say, because all of our tamers are psychics, we do run that standard triple copies of E-Teleport. So because of that, we can actually run the one Ghost Ogre as yet another hand trap, but also as another psychic for us to summon, and it helps us give us level 3 tuning in this deck, which can really help us get into some pretty powerful synchros. So that is why we do run the one Ghost Ogre. That will round off our monster lineup. Moving on to the spell cards, we start off with the one Ritual Beast Bonds. Now, we have the one Bonds because it is searchable, and it can really just help us with our OTKs, and we really don't need more than one copy, again, for the fact that it is searchable. So we do have the one Bonds. Following that, like I said, we have the triple copy of E-Teleport, because pretty much your power cards are all of your psychic monsters, so having ways to get them onto your field for free is really, really nice. And it's also pretty beneficial that emergency teleport, even if you don't use that monster, it gets banished. So again, emergency teleport is just really good, because even if worse comes to worse, you can still banish the monster you did just summon with E-Teleport to use as resources from your resource pool, which is your banish pile. So that is why we run the 3 E-Tele. Next up, we have the triple MST, for the fact that this deck has a fairly good Necros matchup already, so we can't afford to actually mainboard the triple MST so that we don't get blown out by cards like Lose One Turn, Vanities, Skill Drain, and all that kind of sad stuff. So again, we don't want to get floodgated, so that's why we can't afford to run the triple MST. Again, because our Necros matchup isn't as important, because we have a fairly good matchup against the biggest deck of the format. Next up, we have for one of spells, and we start off with the one Gold Sarcophagus, because it just gets us one card into our banish pile, which is really, really helpful to get us into our contact plays. Very similarly to Gold Sark, we have the one Foolish Burial, because it gets cards into our graveyard, and it can help us set up our Apelios and all that kind of stuff to just help us get more stuff into our banish pile. Then finally, we have the other two one-of spells. We have the one Soul Charge, because of the fact that sometimes if we keep abusing our Ritual Beast Ulti Cannahawk, we will end up having quite a few monsters in our graveyard. So having the ability to Soul Charge them all back and just make big boards is really, really helpful. And then finally, for the last spell card we do run, we have the one Raigeki, because board clearing is always fun and you can just never get enough of it. Moving on to the trap cards, we start off with the triple copy of Ritual Beast Ambush, Ritual Beast Steeds, oh my lord. But yes, we run the 3 copy of Ritual Beast Steeds, because Steeds is probably one of the best, if not the best, disruptive trap right now, in my opinion, because it's non-targeting destruction, and if you play your cards right, you can get upwards of maybe 2, 3, or even 4 monsters destroyed on your opponent's side of the field, which is really, really nice, as if your opponent ever tries to go for an OTK play, Steeds can just immediately just answer that whole big board, which is really, really cool. So that's why we do run 3. Following that, we have the 3 copies of now Ritual Beast Ambush, because Ritual Beast Ambush can be almost a 1-card contact fusion, because it can just summon us 1 Tamer and 1 Beast from either our Banish or our Graveyard, so that's always nice. And just having ways to special summon our monsters on our opponent's turn, so that during our turn we don't have that special summoning restriction, is always really, really cool. Next up, we have the 1 copy of Macrocosmos. Now, to go over this card really, really quick, the reason why I just have Macro in this deck rather than both Macro and Dimensional Fissure is because of the fact that, personally, I like Macrocosmos more, because it is a little bit more reactive than D-Fissure, because that Macro is a trap. So, say if our opponent activates something like a Shadow Fusion, or something like that, they're not initially fearing something like a Macrocosmos, because they do not know that I have it. Unlike Dimensional Fissure, where you have to basically telegraph that you're activating it, because then everyone is going to know. So, your opponent might change their plays based on knowing that D-Fissure is on board, but because Macro is, again, a trap, you can actually use it reactively more often than not. And you can really just start negging your opponent and just preventing them from gaining advantage during their plays, which is really, really cool. So that is why I do run just the 1 Macro in the main deck. And then finally, we have 2 more traps. We have the 1 Solemn and the 1 Torrential. Now, we have Solemn for just general summoning negation, and we have Torrential for just general board wiping. So that will round us off for our main deck. Moving on to our extra deck, we start off with the double copy of Ritual Beast Ulti Gaia Pelio. Now, I know one of them is a proxy, and that's because Mail is slow again, which is really, really dumb, but whatever, it cannot be helped. But yeah, we do have the two copies of Ulti Gaia Pelio. We usually will never need two copies to actually summon. Majority of the time, I will only ever use the second copy for Rampengu's effect to help us foolish a psychic monster from our deck, as really, if you can just summon Ulti Gaia Pelio, you usually should be able to win the game because of the fact that it has the Herald of Perfection effect, which is really, really nuts. And again, because of that, you really can just summon your boss monster and just sit on it and just really just lock down your opponent. So that's really, really cool. Next up, we have our triple copy of Ritual Beast Ulti Cannahawk, because Ulti Cannahawk is our abusable searcher of the deck, as he is the one that will be able to get us our Ritual Beast Steeds, or Ambush, our Bonds, or any of our monsters that we might need at any given time. So, of course, we have to run 3 of him. Following that, we have the triple copy of Ritual Beast Ulti Apelio, because Apelio is our Star Eater and our beater of the deck. So again, we also run 3 copies, just so we also have the ammo for our Rampengu, as well as, again, we just have copies to use for sticks. Finally, for the last contact feature we do run the 1 copy of Ritual Beast Ulti Petalfin. Now, I don't feel 2 copies of Petalfin is necessary, for the fact that we really won't ever be going into it outside of maybe turn 1 or turn 2, and really, if worst comes to worst, we can always just use it for Rampengu fodder, because, again, it isn't as essential as the other ulti monsters in our extra deck. But it's good to have in those weird situations, or it's always good to have to dump so that you can dump your dead Petalfin. So that's why we do have that 1 Ritual Beast Ulti Petalfin to round off our fusions. Going into Synchros, which we actually do run 2 of, we have the 1 copy of Clearing and the 1 copy of Metaphys Horus. Now, Clearing is obviously really, really good, as, in my opinion, he's probably the best level 7 Synchro that we do have access to right now. So, of course, we do run 1 copy of him, because we have access to him with Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit plus a level 4. And then we also have Metaphys Horus in here, because of the fact that we do have Zephyr in the main deck. And if we ever can synchro up Metaphys Horus with Zephyr and Ghost Ogre, we can essentially make a walking mini Snatch Steal, I guess you could say, which is really, really cool. So that is why we do run these 2 Synchro monsters. Next up, we have 4 just generic rank 4 staple XYZs in the form of the 1 Gagaga Samurai, 1 Castel, 1 Dweller, and 1 E-Knight. All of these cards are just fairly standard rank 4s. They're all really, really good in their applications. And Gagaga Samurai is also, I should just mention, he's a generic Blade Armor Ninja. So he can really help you out with those OTK plays also. So that is going to round us up for our extra deck. Moving on to our side deck, we start off with the triple copy of Maxi, because Burning Abyss, Shaddolls, and all that kind of stuff special summon quite a bit. So having a way to just gain free advantage, or just force our opponent to rethink their plays, is really, really cool. Then we have the triple Artifact Lancia for the Necros matchup, and maybe the Mirror match. Oh yeah, and also Infernoids too. Infernoids get wrecked by Lancia, but yes, we have the 3 Lancia just for those matchups. Then, for the last monster we do run in the side deck, we have the second copy of Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, just for the Clyfort matchup and whatnot. Next up for the spells, we have just 2 copies of Dark Hole in the sideboard. This is usually just for matchups where I feel I need Mass Destruction more than not. Like, against things like Satellar Knights, where they can constantly keep swarming the board, or even like Necros, if they Jinlock quite often. We do have just the Dark Holes in the the side deck, just to give us more destruction. Going into the traps now, we have 2 copies of Mirror Force for the Clyfort matchup, the Yosenju matchup, and anything that is really OTK heavy. Then we have the double Ojama trio for Burning Abyss, as well as, to an extent, Necros. Because if we do activate Ojama trio during our opponent's standby phase, they cannot banish for their mirrors, which is really, really cool. Then we have 2 more traps, which is just 1 Bottomless and 1 Vanities. Bottomless is here, obviously, for the Clyfort matchup and whatnot, and Vanities is here just as a general floodgate that we can use. Well then, alright guys, that is it for this new episode of Path to Perfection. I hope you all did enjoy, and as always, if you guys have any thoughts, questions, comments, concerns, always make sure to leave them down in the comment section below, as this series is run off of your guys' ideas, thoughts, comments, and all of that kind of good stuff. So again, make sure to leave your thoughts somewhere, and as always, this is QREM from the Trinity of Lift, and I'll see all of you guys later. Peace.